Welcome to Greenhouse Grower to Grower, the podcast where we talk to growers from across the greenhouse industry about market trends, innovation, their biggest challenges and opportunities, and more. I'm Brian Sparks, editor of Greenhouse Grower. The International Plant Trialing Conference took place for the first time in several years this past month in Minneapolis. The event brought together plant trial managers from growing operations, universities, and botanical gardens, as well as plant breeders responsible for developing the varieties featured at trial gardens across the country. In this episode, I talked to Alicain Carlson of Syngenta Flowers, who is one of the main organizers of the conference along with the National Garden Bureau. Alicain shares her thoughts on how plant trials continue to evolve, her own takeaways from the event, and much more. Here's our conversation. I want to start with your background to kind of give our listeners a sense of who you are and kind of how you got to be in this industry. So let's start with that.
Yeah, so let's see. I've been with Syngenta Flowers now for a little over 10 years. And right now, I'm the head of marketing for our Americas region. But when I started with Syngenta 10 years ago, I finished a PhD program at North Carolina State University. So I got a doctorate in horticultural science and I studied cut flower production and post harvest.
Okay.
So have an academic background in cut flowers and joined Syngenta as a technical scientist.
Mm.
And what I really uh, loved about the opportunity for that role was that I would be able to do my own trials in my own greenhouse on work with Syngenta genetics that um, directly benefited grower knowledge for like
Yeah.
how to grow Syngenta flowers genetics. So, that's really where, through academic research and my time with Syngenta doing technical trialing,
Yeah.
where I got into trialing. Yep.
Okay. So how did that take you then to, we just wrapped up last month, the International Plant Trialing Conference which had returned following a pretty long absence. How did you came to be involved in that and eventually become one of the main organizers for the agenda for that?
Yeah, so I've been involved with AAS, so one of the like sister organizations to NGB that's now under the National Garden Bureau
Yeah.
umbrella. I was involved with them for I think I'm on like my sixth or the seventh year, kind of volunteering for. I was on the board for AAS for several years, and then when the organizations merged, I went from being the president of AAS to the president of NGB.
Mm.
So I really, as part of my responsibilities in that role for NGB, trying to find opportunities to meet some industry needs
Yeah.
and, keep NGB fun and fresh. Diane Blazek, the executive director, had brought up this international plant trialing conference that had happened in the past. And um, myself and the rest of the board kind of decided, hey, well, this is a really good time to like bring this back as part of something, AAS and NGB are involved in.
Yeah. Okay. And that's one thing I really want to touch on is, kind of the importance of field trials in general. So I know you go to California spring trials and it's great. You're seeing a lot of new varieties in very pristine conditions. And that's very well for the breeders and the brokers and the growers that all go. Then you take the next step and you shift these plants into real world settings and kind of determine, where a plant's going to grow best. What are the things to look for? So can you kind of talk about the importance of field trials to this industry?
Yeah, no, and it's a really cool, like, dichotomy to think about CAST in comparison to, like, field trials, and I think why we need both, because CAST has or, like, formerly PAC trials has really turned into more of a, like, marketing showcase, educational event, get to know our new products and our people,
Mm.
and kinda see the new varieties in their best form, like how retail ideas and it's really like morphed into more than just product performance.
Right.
And but then, during the summer, the late spring through like late summer into fall, you have these great trials that happen all across the country where you can actually see the true performance of a genetic in all different locations.
Yeah.
So, which isn't something that realistically we can replicate at Cast. So, it's great that we have both avenues to really showcase from like end to end the performance and potential of a flower's genetic.
Okay. Well, I know one of those sites, as small as it is our front porch. We've got a bunch of plants, including the eye candy begonia, which is out there right now, which is it's early November and it's still in beautiful bloom right now. I'm loving every time I open up the front door and I see that sitting on our porch. So that's great. And I'll put in a plug too for anybody who's listening to this. So over the course of the next couple of months, our team reaches out to trial managers from across the country, whether it's growing operations or universities or botanical gardens, and get their feeling on what are some of their favorite, I'll say the standout varieties, how things like weather affected this year, anything that they're doing new at the trials beyond just the plants themselves. So over the course of the next couple of months, if you're listening to this, you can go to greenhousegrower.com and check out all of those highlights from areas across the country. Um, so kind of to go back to the trialing conference, let's talk a little bit more about that. How you put together the agenda for this year's conference, and also maybe like why was this the right time to bring the conference back to the forefront?
Yeah, so, we really saw this need to bring it back, with NGB being, having the AAS trialing program and all of our amazing judges that are part of that, and, wanting to make sure that we're keeping up with the latest technology and that all the judges are on the same page in how they trial. So we have a true fair trial, that we're judging all these entries on from the breeding companies.
Okay.
And, so there was that aspect of it, but then also as an industry in general where people are moving roles, we're seeing a lot of retirements, transitions, successions, and there were a lot of new people coming into trialing roles in the industry. And often, they tend to be roles that are uh, like entry roles, stepping stone roles in organizations into further career development.
Yeah.
And, we really saw it as an opportunity to help standardize and educate and, get everyone on the same page and connect all of these wonderful trialing people with
Yeah.
people who've been doing it for a while and people who are new and get everyone on the same page because trialing is so critical to the success of our industry
Mm.
that the stronger we are in plant trialing and evaluations and sharing that feedback, like the stronger our industry is and actually putting out high quality genetics.
Well, I think it's interesting too. You look at some of where the trials are taking place, and you see a lot of them are focused on both what growers want at the trials and what consumers want as well. And I know I'm sure from your perspective, that's something that you have to deal with. As you're looking at new plant offerings, is how do you meet the needs of what a grower can grow and what a consumer is going to look for, and really looking ahead to make sure you have all that on the same page. Because for a variety to be successful, it needs to have support of both growers and consumers.
Exactly, and that is the complexities of that is also what we were thinking about when we um, built out the plan for what we wanted to have sessions about at the
Yeah.
plant trialing conference because, yeah, trialing happens at kind of all stages and for all consumers of our horticultural products.
Mhm.
So, we had to think about it, yeah, from the breeder stage. So we wanted to make sure in the program we had the breeders represented and talked about the kinds of trials that breeders need to do to think about the performance within our business, the trialing that we do to make sure it checks the boxes for us,
Yeah.
the trialing that we do with our grower customers to make sure that it checks the boxes for them, but then also getting that consumer feedback. But then growers do their own trials too and manage that in a way, whether they're working with breeders or they're working with retailers or whatever it might be. There's lots of stakeholders involved here. So
Right.
and we also wanted to cover flowers and vegetables,
Mhm.
because, that's important to to consumers to have both.
Yeah.
Um, and also led to the panel style discussions as well, because it would be easy to kind of make the sessions a little more biased to one direction or another with just
Yeah.
one main speaker. So we decided to go with the all panel style for this kind of revamp year of the International Plant Conference, Trialing Conference, to get more diverse perspectives out there about a broader topic, to kind of cover more of the wide base of everyone who does trials.
Yeah, well, and I like just personally, I like panels too, whether it's at an event like Cultivate or something like this, where it's not one person on stage talking about one particular topic. It's a discussion, and you can't really recreate that anywhere else. I think so. Going back to as trial managers, go through the trials, they collect data from both growers and consumers. How does that data then get back to someone like you and somebody like Syngenta? And then how does that affect, how you move forward with some of these varieties and decide, okay, we're really going to put all of our support behind these moving forward?
Yeah, no, and and everybody does that a little bit differently, like the feedback loop, kind of depending on maybe what data collection programs the each grower has, where we put out trials,
Yeah.
and even internally our own data collection options that we have. Um, and it's interesting when we put trials out to different growers, they all have, their markets are all a little different, their production styles and techniques are all a little different.
Mm,
Um, and their stakeholders are different. So a lot of the feedback happens usually in some sort of, PDF report with lots of great photos and feedback and ratings, like um depending on the grower. But
sure.
the best feedback gift is a really clear thumbs up or thumbs down on whether they liked the variety or not.
Yeah.
Now, so, really with those trials, we want to know, hey, do you have a place for this in your market with your customer and your sales channel? Like, does this fill a need? Yes or no?
Mhm.
You know?
Yeah.
So,
I guess that's the thing for every grower is, you can grow the most high quality plant, most beautiful plant possible, but if there's not a need for it, what are you doing then,
right. Yeah.
And kind of to go back to what you were talking about earlier about, there's another generation of, trial managers coming in, another generation of breeders coming in. How does, the tools that they use to, not just develop varieties, but to, collect feedback from trials. How are those new tools evolving to the benefit of, the trial managers themselves and for a company like Syngenta Flowers?
Yeah, no, I think it's been really great, to see some of the new, like, software and apps, and different programs that have been put out by various companies, and it was really great to have them, a lot of those trialing, applications, the representatives from them at our International Plant Trialing Conference,
Yeah.
is I think faster and high quality data collection is really needed for trialing to, like, really take a leap in, like, time savings and expense savings,
Yeah.
and getting that feedback out to stakeholders faster, so
Mhm.
that way we can make decisions faster. So all the different apps where, like, data collection and, like, ratings and photography is streamlined, and then, like, they make them into reports that can be easily communicated,
Okay.
it is great, because the faster we can make a good decision, the better it is for everybody, but especially us as breeders.
Yeah. Well, and to that point, I mean, you've got to be able to look ahead clearly and know what, where the consumer is now is one thing, where the consumer is going to be, 4 or 5 years down the road. Have you seen in the past couple of years, some emerging categories and plants that you weren't really expecting to emerge, but have become something that has been a key part of what you're trying to do now?
Yeah, it's interesting, like, looking at the trends, especially, like, some things that are, um, maybe some, like, overall crop categories that are maybe declining, but then they just need, like, a fresh new use of
Mm.
them. So, like, something that because, like, consumer is, like, using it differently,
Sure.
so it's not necessarily, like, all the time a crop itself that's changing, but how the consumer is using it, so we have to pitch it in a different way,
Mm.
and an example of this that comes to mind for us is, like, with mums and geraniums, like, stalwart crops, like, necessary like, foundational crops in our
Sure.
industry, but, like, consumers are wanting to use them differently, like, putting them in combos with the same species or with different species. They're doing a lot more container gardening than maybe in the ground. So, like, um, changing how we talk about those crops to growers and how we show them, like in our marketing,
Yeah.
has helped kind of meet those different demands and like perspectives of consumers. Um, but, definitely perennials has picked up a ton, over the last several years. So, we've been focusing on that, and native crops, or at least
Sure.
ones that are like perceived as native, um, to get that feel in people's gardens.
Yeah, well, and I mean, talk about the marketing side of it. I remember going to the Syngenta Flowers cast location and just being blown away by some of the marketing approaches that you guys were taking. Really, it was all about, here's an option for every grower that's out there. So that was really impressive when I made that visit there. Um, Going back to the trials conference again. So I know you were there as an organizer, as a presenter. You were also there as an attendee. So kind of want to get your feel on just your own biggest takeaways from the conference.
Yeah, like my biggest takeaways were, I mean, really the huge opportunity for networking.
Mhm.
I really liked hearing from like all the different perspectives of like people who do trials and like what they want to get out of it. Like ultimately we're all kind of executing the same thing,
Mm.
but with a different eye on it, like
Sure.
a different thing we're trying to get out of it. So it was really cool to hear like from the university perspective and even other breeders' perspectives, other than, our own. And then to the grower, and then even from like the botanical gardens and the nonprofits, like
Yeah.
why they do it, connecting with consumers and, um, having that showcase for their visitors. So, hearing all those diverse perspectives and, like, meeting new people, were huge takeaways for me, and then I think really just I don't know, I'm all about vibes, so, like, the
Yeah.
energy in the room, like, how hungry everyone in there was to have these opportunities to connect and learn and ask questions, and it was just a really great energy, so I'm excited that we're gonna be planning another international plant trialing conference.
Well, and speaking of that, and I love that vibe feeling that you have there, because I mean, that tells you that, there is a strong future for this. I know that this year's conference just wrapped up, but do you have an idea of what's next for the conference in terms of timing or, going into the future here with that?
Yes. So after the conference, we sent out a survey. Well, actually, at the end of the conference, we did a little quick survey too, with in the closing session,
Yeah.
but which was overwhelmingly positive for doing another international plant trialing conference. And I think the highest votes were like every like 3 to 4 years is what
Okay.
people recommended, because we really wanted to hear, okay, you guys are the ones in the room that would potentially be coming back or
Yeah.
recommending other people to come, what's your feedback?
Sure.
And then afterwards, like I said, we sent out a survey to everyone to capture even more feedback. And we've landed on doing it every 3 years.
Okay.
So the next one will be in 2028.
Okay. Okay. I'm sure it's probably still too early to know the location of it, but
Well, it'll be confirmed, but we are considering, having it in the same location,
okay.
because it was kind of, like, centrally located, fairly easy for most people to get to, affordable, and that hotel property itself was very reasonable and safe and accommodating, so we are considering a similar location.
Okay.
Um, but then for sure, we heard everyone's feedback on the survey about changing up the style. So
Okay.
we're already kind of planning sessions and topics and a rough format for the next one that will have some panel discussions
Sure.
and then some like individual speakers. We'll have some sessions be breakout groups. So that way we can just break up the format a little bit more.
Yeah.
And now that we as organizers I don't have this year under our belt and kind
Yeah.
of got the feedback and like heard from everybody, we have a better idea um, of how to make it even better based
Yeah.
on the feedback.
So I guess there's no better time to start looking at the next one than as soon as you're done with the most current one, because then everything's fresh on your mind and you know immediately what worked, what could have been better, and helps you plan quickly for the next one. So, and I know that you also promoted some of the local trials taking place in the area too. So you're not just coming to a trials conference and sitting in a room for a couple of days. You can also get out and actually see what's happening in the community around you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Diane had organized some connections with like, yeah, the University of Minnesota and their trials and Bailey's and the great work that they're doing in the area. So we'll probably do something similar to that. But that reminds me of a great point that came up quite a bit in the feedback was about having more tours, like
Okay.
take me through a trial and, point out best practices, how you set it up, that kind of thing. And right now, what we're thinking we'll do instead of having something like that during the actual International Plant Trialing Conference is building out an event that we always did with AAS and NGB already with the summer summits,
Okay.
where we moved those around the country to see like different AAS trial gardens. But thinking about using that event in the in between years
Okay.
to show more trial sites and kind of piggyback off of that. So that way, plant trialing conference will be more like purely educational with some
Right.
like optional side tours, but then make the summer summit really like, you know, going through trial gardens focused. And that one we can move across the country still.
Okay. Awesome. I kind of want to wrap up with, looking at your own perspective on the future of plant trials and of the future of floriculture in general. What are you most excited about when it comes to to how trials can progress in the future, and then just overall the floriculture industry? What has you really excited moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, mentioned it a little bit earlier with like all the different technologies for data collection. I really think if we can stay focused on optimizing that um, as for the floriculture industry and like getting good data fast and being able to share it more quickly,
Hmm.
we'll be able to make good decisions faster, which I think is something that our industry needs. As you know, we have more and more new varieties all the time. There's so much plant material out there, and it's like, okay, how do we really make the best decision for consumers and for our locations and regionally and all the things.
Yeah.
So really excited, yeah, about the technology behind it for data collection and communication. Um, I think there's some really smart people that are coming up in our industry that I am really excited to see their career development and how they become leaders in our industry and help in communicating the benefits of plants and like help growers and help consumers like understand why you should choose this plant and like I just the leadership that's coming up and being developed I think is really exciting and yeah, so happy to see that. um so I think the future is super bright for our industry. It's just better decision making faster with really smart plant people at the helm.
Thanks for joining us. You can learn more at greenhousegrower.com. Please subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen, and please leave us a rating as it helps other podcast listeners find the show.